film years ago called, what was the name of it? It was called Hawks. It was a film where Timothy Dalton, he had cancer. Him and his friend had cancer, and I can't really remember the film, right? But I remember this small part of it when they went into this restaurant or something like that, and him and the other guy, who had both dying of cancer, if I remember rightly, they Timothy Dalton said to the other guy, Anthony Edwards, to put on this red nose, right? And that was the picture on the cover of the VHS cover years ago, right? So, and they put it on. He asked them to put it on so other people would laugh at him, right? Or laugh at them and get beyond this kind of like been ridiculed and kind of like, going beyond it and stuff like that. So I don't even know why I'm mentioning that because I'm doing the Living Daylights, right? But it just came into my head about Timothy Dalton. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to mention it is that Timothy Dalton is a brilliant actor. He's really, really good. He was like a Shakespearean actor. He done all the plays and stuff like that. He done an old play with Anthony Hopkins years ago on the stage and stuff. So like he's a really good classically trained Shakespearean actor. And he's probably one of the best actors that kind of like done James Bond, right? And that doesn't mean much. In some areas, it doesn't mean much, right? But I think that when you watch The Living Daylights, right, that was Bond number 15. The Living Daylights, Bond number 15, License to Kill, Bond 16, right? So he only done two of them, right? But when you watch The Living Daylights and you look at Timothy Dalton's performance in it, you can definitely see, without a doubt, that he knew how to hit the marks with James Bond and to keep him kind of likable at the same time. But if you look at some of his looks in the film and his eyes and stuff like that, you can see that, like, this guy, like, you can tell through his acting and stuff like that, that he was very realistic as a spy, as a super spy, and someone who would have no problem doing what he needed to do to complete his mission, right? So, The Living Daylights was a film that I always kind of liked. And plus as well, I always liked Timothy Dalton as James Bond. He was kind of half unconventional and kind of half realistic, but he was super cold in a certain way as well. It was like hard to put a finger on him, right? I know Sean Connery was very good at James Bond, but I have to admit, I mean, if I have my own personal preference, my own personal opinion on the whole thing, it's very close between the two of them, Sean Connery and. But I really like Timothy Dalton as James Bond. I think it's a shame that he didn't do more of them. He was contracted for three of them, but for something to do with some legal matter or something like that, they didn't do the third one, right? So, and if you look at the James Bond, the last James Bond, which was Daniel Craig, I'm not a fan of Daniel Craig as James Bond at all. You look at some of his pictures and stuff like that, he seems to come across as this like a football hooligan hard man or something, squinting his eyes and being all cold and all the rest of it. But it just didn't seem to work for me at all, him as James Bond. He's more like someone from a page three or page seven magazine or something like that. He just didn't work for me as James Bond at all. He didn't seem to have that kind of like what Dalton and Connery had, which was they could be very charming and they could be very kind of like have different they could have good humor and stuff like that and kind of like come across in certain ways, but at certain times you could look at them and go, that fucker's dangerous. And I think that Daniel Craig played it like, oh, I want to be dangerous all the time or something like that. I just wasn't really a fan of his at all, right? So The Living Daylights is one of Ian Fleming's last small stories, and then they started making different stories up because obviously he died or whatever, right? But it was basically a short story. The Living Daylights is a short story, and the short story consisted of basically Bond's part in The Living Daylights where he shoots the girl who was playing the cello. He shoots the gun from her hands, right? Because he went on his own judgment. He didn't think that like this girl is not an assassin. She was playing the cello and just the way she moves and all the rest of it, just something just doesn't seem right. And that was good in The Living Daylights that he was making certain decisions on his own. He wasn't just following orders. You know what I mean? So kind of like there was loads of problems with The Living Daylights. I think that the last act with all the stuff with the guys with all the horses and the Arabic guys at the end and everything, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was a bit over the top, and kind of like, and the bad guys, the two bad guys, kind of in it. They weren't brilliant, but it was still pretty good in it. It was humorous. You know, I think Joe Don Baker, if they could have made his part a little bit better in it, because he's a great actor, that guy. I think they could have made it a little bit better. You know, but what runs through the film is this thing called Spirit Spilnum, right, which basically means death to spies, right, which is an old it's from kind of like Stalin's time, death to spies. He had this policy of kind of like, death to spies. So Spirit Spilnum is kind of like runs through the film, and kind of like, the film is good. I thought it was really, really, really good. I thought it was a good story to it. There was good humor in it. The girl was very good in it, and I think that Timothy Dalton made a brilliant Bond. I really, really think that he doesn't get enough credit for it. It's just a film, I know that, but I love films. Love hate relationship with movies, right? But I don't think he gets enough credit, because if you look at him as James Bond, if you look at him, right, like I said a minute ago, he was a Shakespearean actor, is a Shakespearean actor. But if you look at him in certain parts, he's very believable as someone who could be cold and ruthless, where his mission, where he needed to complete his mission, and you could see it in his face. And I thought that was really, really good, you know. So, The Living Daylights, yeah, cool film, great Bond, and like I said, I think it's a pity he didn't make more of them, because I think that he was definitely very close, in my opinion, to Sean Connery as the best James Bond. I might even give him the edge a tiny bit, to be honest. Tiny bit, maybe. It's hard to say, really, but like I said, it's a shame that he only done two, because they were really good. The two films are really good, and he was great in it. I yield.